Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm your host, Sarah K. Heater. Big Brave Business is a podcast where we challenge the status quo of traditional business practices. So if you're ready to challenge norms, rewrite the rules, and redefine what it means to lead with courage and integrity, then grab a notebook and let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. This episode, I was going to say it's well-timed, but I mean, the recording is. I'm sure it will still be true when it airs, which is just, I laugh because that's all we can do. But help me give a warm welcome to Alison Smith. Alison is an author, speaker, and coach dedicated to empowering leaders to build unshakable resilience, foster deep-rooted confidence, and create meaningful impact by aligning their actions with their core vision and values. She helps her clients to leverage the power of small acts of resilience to design thriving personal and professional lives. Her work has been featured in various publications, and her book, Drawing Your Line, Setting Boundaries Step by Step, guides many to healthier living. Outside of work, she enjoys a good book with a glass of wine and spending time with her husband and 2 kids. Welcome to the podcast, Alison.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
I'm really interested in this conversation, not just because obviously like instant connection and really liked your form that you filled out, so that's how we met, right? But I also the topic that you specifically brought up is resilience. And I think that not only is this so important in the state of the world today, but it's also just the backbone of entrepreneurship. So let's just start with like, I've heard a lot of people express when you say someone's resilient, they're like, listen, I don't want to be. Like it's because I've had to go through hell. So it isn't, we mean it as a compliment, but it isn't necessarily received as a compliment. But from your perspective, like, I don't know, what is resilience and what's the role that resilience has played in your life and your business?
I have a pretty different definition of resilience than most people, and I too sort of chafe at the collective definition of the word. And so let me share with you how I look at it. So actually, if you looked it up in the dictionary, there would be 2 definitions. One is about the ability to recover quickly from challenges, toughness. But the second definition is the ability of a substance to spring back into shape. It's like the scientific definition of resilience, right? And I really like that definition. When I think of resilience, I think of springing back into the shape of ourselves, coming back to what I call our sturdy center. And this actually comes from the way I define thrive. So my business is called the Thrive Designer. And as I was thinking about the word thrive, it too has a pretty tricky collective mental model, collective definition of what it means to thrive, all about achievements, all about accomplishing, hustling, etc. And sort of the end of the journey moment. Okay, now I'm thriving. And for me, that just never sat right. That I thought, well, then, so can we not thrive when we're having a moment of adversity? Can we not thrive until we're at the end point? And I looked up the etymology of the word, and it comes from an Old Norse word that means to grasp to oneself. I know, mind blowing, right? Like that is what it truly means to thrive, is to hold on to yourself. And I think where we've gotten this wrong is that it's easy to hold on to ourselves when things are going well.
Mm.
It is so much harder to hold on to our sturdy center in the moments of challenge, adversity, and trials. And so that's the context in which I define resilience.
Mm.
Resilience is coming back to that sturdy place over and over and over again.
Mm. That's interesting for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's really pretty. But second of all, I think it is all related, but I also feel like one of the things I talk a lot about on this podcast in an episode that just came out like a couple weeks before this one, we talked a lot about when you lead with your core values, it makes kind of the hard situations or the hard conversations easier because you're coming from a place of value instead of being attached to like the outcome. And I think that feels really applicable here, where it's like you have to know your center in order to be able to grasp your center. That
Absolutely.
sounded inappropriate. I didn't mean it like that.
No, I know exactly what you need because so many people go, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Where the hell is my sturdy center? What does
Yeah.
that even feel like?
Yeah.
How do I even know when I'm there versus when I'm thrown off?" Because we get thrown off on the daily,
Hmm.
multiple times a day. And so, especially in these times, right,
Yeah.
we're getting thrown off left and right. And so sometimes we don't even remember what it feels like to be there. And cultivating that sturdy center is really the first step of resilience, knowing who you are, knowing what it feels like when you're connected to yourself, and that is your values.
Hmm.
It's also being connected to your own. Actually, I have these 6 Thrive design principles. So I'm going to just go through them really quickly because I think that they're all important here. One is trust. It actually spells thrive, so it's easy to remember. T is trust. And this is about trusting yourself. That is a part of how we find our way to our sturdy center, how we cultivate our sturdy center, because the root of confidence is trust. If I have confidence in someone, I trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, right? If I have confidence in myself, I trust that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to hold my boundaries, etc.
Yeah. I want to insert something here. I can't remember if I've ever talked about this on this podcast. If I did, I think that I probably was most likely to have talked about it in season one, but I've had a lot of conversations at this point. I don't know. But I heard on a podcast a long time ago, like many years ago, maybe 8 years ago, a whole conversation about self trust and this idea of a lot of us. And obviously, it resonated really deeply. So this is very, very true for me, and it's still true for me, even though I listened to this podcast 8 years ago, and it stayed with me every day. Which is, I'll keep my word to everyone else, but I will break my word to myself so quickly. And from a trusting yourself standpoint, it's like massive erosion in trusting yourself because you can't rely on your own word. That blew my mind. That concept of like breaking your word to yourself. And to give an example, if this is new for you listening, like it's the kind of thing of saying, like, I'm definitely going to make my bed every day, and then you don't. Or like, I am definitely going to clean those dishes before I go to bed tonight, and then you don't. I'm definitely going to fold my laundry as soon as the dryer's done, and then you don't. So these are the things that what has helped for me is I stopped making promises to myself that I know I'm not going to keep. So I tell myself when I throw my laundry in the dryer, it's okay if this sits in the dryer for a while, instead of like, okay, I've committed to doing this thing that I know I'm not going to do. Now, those other examples like actually do make my bed every day. And my husband and I have a relationship where he does the dishes. So that is those things were just examples that are just, I think, kind of common. But I think that it starts with small things and it gives you social proof in your brain that you can't trust yourself even for the big things. So then when you have a big commitment, like I've talked on this podcast before, I want to build a business I can one day sell. Do I trust myself that I can and will follow through on that? That feels scary because my brain knows that I can't trust myself to take the laundry out of the dryer, right? So that's what's coming up for me when you talk about trust, because I think I trust myself so much with how I show up for other people. How I show up for myself is a massive work in progress.
Absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. I feel like I have said all of that exactly word for word to clients, to myself, to others. And that was a big light bulb moment for me when looking at trust is, oh, yeah, I'm real trustworthy for everyone else. Everyone else could count on me. And I cannot count on myself, which is what makes boundaries hard, which is what makes being brave and having the courage to take steps out and go outside my comfort zone. It makes all of that so much harder. And it makes moments of adversity harder. It makes moments where there's a deluge of information that we have to process and our nervous systems are going crazy, it makes it really hard to know that at the end of the day, we have our own back. And that is so important. So that's just the T, but it is huge and it's like dense and meaty in and of itself. The H is human centered. So am I treating myself like a human being rather than a human doing? So often we're just really looking outward to our accomplishments to decide if we're worthy, right? Our worthiness is coming from everything that we do rather than who we are and how we show up. And that's shifting to human being. So when I can shift to human being and I can focus on how I'm showing up rather than what I'm doing, when I can tune in to what my human being is telling me I need,
Mm.
and then I meet those needs, further building my sense of self-trust, right? Those two things work hand in hand to continue to build this sturdy center in you.
Mm. I love I love this. I think that this probably for all of us, this is also a work in progress for me. My immediate reaction when you said it is like, "Oh, I do this one." And I think the more I really reflect on it, the more I can really see what my journey has been with it though. And I've shared some things on this podcast and other people's shows a little bit about this, but two things are really coming up for me. One is I have always been a person who defines myself as based on my resume. So since at least high school, if not before that, it's always been about if I can't put it on my resume, I'm not interested in doing it. Now, of course, in entrepreneurship, that's a little different because hopefully I never need a resume again. But I've had this, it was like a running joke in my sorority that everything came back to my resume. And I think that this relationship that I'm in now has been really interesting because I was always working toward my future. And kind of like you said, with this sort of idea of like one day, this is what I'm working toward one day. And then my partner is the total opposite. So he actually really doesn't like planning too far in the future. He's very, very present. And it's a survival mechanism, right? When you've lived through a lot of turmoil and chaos, then your body's in survival mode. And so you live day to day instead of living for the future. So we've actually kind of helped balance each other out where now I've brought him to towards thinking about the future more, and he has brought me very much to being in the present. And I think the pandemic, of course, in 2020 affected a lot of people this way, where it forces us to be a lot more present in the moment of like, I'm here now. And I also have had the realization in, so I've been in this relationship for just about 10 years. And I've also had this realization in this over the course of those 10 years that this is the future I was working so hard to get to. So like I am in at least the beginning of the phase of my life that I was picturing myself being from the time I was in high school of like, I'm working towards the one day. Well, the one day is here. So, like, now am I going to enjoy it or am I still working toward a future one day? So, that's been an interesting shift. And then the other thing that really came up for me in all of that is like loving myself well, which I had a terrible breakup before this relationship, and I remember thinking all kinds of horrible things and like trying to get comfortable with those horrible things. This is a whole other conversation, and I actually had a really good deep dive about it on my friend Katie's podcast, so I can link to that in the description. But I was sitting with these horrible thoughts and questions, and I asked myself if someone you loved, like one of your best friends or your mom or your whatever, your sister, your niece, your goddaughter, like asked you these horrible questions about themselves, what would you respond? And then, like, that's what I was trying to coach myself to. And I stopped cold at the if someone you loved asked these questions because it was such a hard reality of like, wait a second, I'm not someone I love. That's disturbing. Like I see that as a separate category from myself. I should be at the top of that list, right? So that was a huge turning point for me and like, hang on. this is I'm a human being, not a human doing. My role is not what I'm doing. My role is just to be. So I think both of those things really come up for me. And it's funny that they're both like relationship oriented, but we define ourselves in relation to other people. So whatever.
Yeah, but they're relationship oriented to ourselves. What is our relationship like to ourselves? And ultimately, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about cultivating sturdiness, right? I think some of this comes back to like the old thing that we probably, a lot of us can relate to, which was like, oh, finish your homework before you go out to play, right? And so you're learning from an early age, I need to finish my homework before I go out to play. I need to finish the work before I enjoy life, so to speak. And so then here you are as an adult, and sure, that work ethic has served you, but we have now created a belief system where I can't actually enjoy anything until I'm done with all that there is to do. And guess what? We're never going to reach the end of that to-do list. We're never going to, maybe your daily to-do list, but like the life to-do list, we're not going to reach the end of it. If when we reach the end of it, we kind of feel sort of lost. And so we just put another thing on the list and another thing on the list. And so what I find and what I think is beautiful about what you just said is that at some point we all have to realize like, oh, I've accomplished so much that I wanted to when I was little or when I was growing up or the dreams I had for myself. So when do I get to enjoy that? When do I get to go out to play? When do I get to actually just sit back and say, wow, look at what I've achieved, look what I'm doing. Let me just enjoy it. And so the more we can do that, whether that's in a weekly reflection, a monthly reflection, a yearly reflection, or better yet, each day to take moments to be like, wow, look at this. Look what I get to do today. Look what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that can really change the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay, what's R?
Okay, R is responsive, and that's in contrast to reactive. And so, really, the key here with this principle is the pause. The pause, the space between the stimulus and the response, as Viktor Frankl says, like that's where all of our power is, right? And that is absolutely so true, right? That if something bad happens, if I read a news story, if I have something happen with a family member, or I have something that doesn't go right, there is a moment before I respond that is where I have the power to come back to myself. Then I can come back to, okay, what's most important here? What do I want to believe? How do I want to show up for this situation? What is going to serve me? All of those questions that help us then respond in a much better way. Even just simply asking yourself, what are my options for responding? I could yell, I could scream, I could go raise my voice, I could donate, I could align myself, I could be an advocate, right? Just even asking yourself, what are my options for responding? That is a powerful question to ask yourself to come back to that center and then choose how you want to move forward from there.
Interesting. I can honestly say I didn't expect this to be part of the list of things, but I do think it really does. It calls back really well to the conversation with Joanna a couple of weeks ago, where we were talking about what I mentioned earlier, approaching hard situations from a place of core values. But I think I'm just trying to think to use examples of how we respond to things all day, every day.
Yeah, and what you just demonstrated so well is actually that we create a narrative in our mind to make sense of something. So
Mm,
whether it's as simple as a price increase on something that you're using, or it's children being separated from their families at the border, our brains are pattern seeking, sense making organs. And so our brains tell stories. And what you said about being driven by your values is actually relatable to the stories idea because our reactions are always driven by our first stories that our brain tells. And our brain's first stories are informed by a lot of our previous like childhood crap and all of that. Like when I say crap, I mean like our baggage from our childhood, how we were raised, how we may have interpreted something as a child with a child's level of awareness, right? And so the work that we do to shift those stories and to question those stories, right? Just to ask, okay, what is this bringing up for me? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? What feels violated? What about this feels wrong? What about this feels right? Whatever. Like to take the moment and the pause to be curious about the narrative that your brain is telling you and maybe what values are being violated, what personal ways you like to show up or feel important for you to show up feel violated, then you can say, okay, let me first change my narrative if necessary. And second, use my values to drive how I want to respond to the situation. Right. So those are both like working in tandem, our values as part of our core and the stories that our brain will tell. And our stories that our brain will tell first are often not aligned. And so we just have to look at them not as wrong, not as problematic, but they're indicative. They're sometimes symptoms that we can get curious about and then learn from and move forward. Can we fold that in to the sturdy center and say, okay, I see why I thought that first. I see why that was my first reaction. I'm mad. I'm mad about this price increase. But now that I've looked at it, I've interrogated it a little bit, I understand why. And so now I could drop maybe the anger about it and move into the action that the anger is fueling me to. That's my response. And we're jumping a little bit. Well, I'll share what I is because it's pretty straightforward and that's just incremental. So focusing on what's the next right step rather than getting so overwhelmed and bogged down with the hugeness of where you want to go. So to me, especially when we're in a moment of adversity, we just have to focus on what's the next right thing, the next right thing. And then the V is values driven. So just as we're talking about here, and that's why I wanted to get to that, is that are we being driven by our values or are we being driven by something else? Or there's something driving. Can we get curious about what is driving and if it's the right thing to be driving?
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Obviously, I didn't know what they were beforehand. So, like, to me, the whole sturdy center thing, I was like, oh, it's your values. And you're like, yep, that's one of them. That's so funny. I think, yeah, that's interesting to go back to since obviously I've spent a lot of time on values, but I think incremental next right thing is so interesting because it is very overwhelming. And I think we talked on this podcast quite a bit about like the election and the aftermath of the election and especially in the conversation with Michelle about why leaders refuse to be brave about DEIB. So that was back in January that came out. So when the this kind of stuff is going on in the world, it feels extremely overwhelming. It feels like a lot. It's very daunting. And I think this actually also comes up in business as well. When I think about like the idea of, okay, I want to build a business I can sell. Well, how do you go from, I just need someone to pay me right now to like, I need money immediately to ultimately, I want to like sell this company? That there's a lot of things that come in between there and it can start to pour on you. I think this also happens when you are inundated with advice on the internet from coaches, and this is coaching. So like there's good coaching, but there's also a lot of opinions out there, right? And when you follow a lot of coaches on social media, for example, or listen to a lot of coaching podcasts, then it can start to feel very overwhelming of all of the things you're supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing everything. I'm supposed to be showing up everywhere. And here's all of the ways that I'm not doing all the things I'm supposed to do. So I feel like what's the next right step is so helpful. I wrote that down. I like think I'm going to put that up in my office. Like that is huge to me, and I think that's so far the part of this conversation that is the one that's going to make me remember this when I'm talking about it weeks, months from now. Like, remember with Alison, next right step. I think this also really calls forward for me what I said, and I think I've shared this in the podcast probably a couple of times, but what helped after in the direct aftermath of the election was a blend of what a couple of kind of mouthpieces had to say, which was I already know what to do because I'm already doing it. I have to keep doing it. So I was already doing this work. I already cared about this work. So I already invested in this work. I need to keep doing the work that I'm doing. This is why it matters. And I knew that. So I don't need to sit in the devastation of the proof that this work needs to be done. I already knew it needed to be done. So I keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing what I already am doing. And maybe to your point about the R, right? Maybe there's more things that I could be doing or different things that I want to do that feel good based on my V, my values, right? Like there's lots of things here that I could also do. But in general, like I was already putting one foot in front of the other. So I'm going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that was really helpful in the like, the world is burning and things are falling apart and people's lives are being threatened and their livelihoods are being threatened. And like, and is this the world that I don't want to live in this world? Right. Instead of like all of that overwhelm, it's like one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and that's not only for our actions, but also when you think about nurturing ourselves along the way, that also feels overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only think of one action, one thing at a time and make space for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so easy when we go 10 steps ahead to move back into that human doing rather than the human being. So the incremental piece is also designed to help you make space for yourself, for nurturing yourself, for taking care of what you need to take care of, for processing, for soothing your
Yeah.
nervous system,
Yeah.
for coming back to your values and all the reflection that that needs, so that you are, when you take the next right step, it is aligned, it is powerful, you are confident, you are clear,
Yeah.
and you are whole and integrated as you take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that's really calling back the beginning of the conversation for me in the keeping promises to myself because in trusting myself because yeah, I think the self-care, all those examples I gave are really like taking care of yourself examples in that part of like making your bed, doing the dishes, like taking the laundry out of the dryer. Sometimes it's like taking a shower, whatever it is. It can feel like a lot, especially when we tiptoe into like mental health and neurodiversity and people who have chronic diagnoses or whatever it is. Like there is a lot of self-care conversation that is also like, here's all the ways you should be taking care of yourself and all the things we know we should be doing. And we're just merciless with ourselves for like, I'm not doing all the things. But it is a lot to ask of us to take really good care of ourselves in all ways and to take really good care of everyone we love in all ways and to be really good citizens of our communities, like participants in our communities at all levels, right? Local, national, the world, and then stewards of the planet. Like we have to also be really good stewards of the planet. It's a lot. Like it's a lot to be all the things for yourself at once. And I'm thinking now I want to call back my conversation with Dr. Sherry last year about radical self-care because she talked about the kind of 7 different arenas with this idea that you need self-care in all these 7 areas, but one of those might be pulling you. Like, what does self care look like in this moment? Like, right now, I need spiritual self care. Like, in this moment, right now, I need physical self care. Like, whatever it is maybe varies from moment to moment. So, you don't have to do all 7 at one time. You need to listen to your body and listen to yourself and your intuition and your gut and figure out what it is your human being needs right now.
I could not agree more. And I have so many things to say about all of that. I agree with you that self-care can feel like it does often feel like one more thing on our plate.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it can feel like more of an injury than sustenance. And
Yeah.
so the shift that I make, because I like making shifts in my mind, is that it's not about self-care, it's about self-connection. Back to our original definition of thriving and our redefinition of resilience, those things that we do for self-care and self-nurturing are actually about connecting to ourselves. And so that can look in one moment very different than what it's going to look like in another moment. And so I always think about really tuning in and asking yourself, how am I doing and what do I need?
Yeah.
To me, those are just the key questions I ask over and over again. When I
Mm,
speak with audiences, I encourage them to just keep asking yourself those two questions. How am I doing? Right? Because that's pulling you in to build your own self-awareness and connection. And then what do I need? And just what's that next right step of taking care of what I need? Maybe I need a rest. Maybe I need to talk to someone. I need community. Maybe I need action. I need to make a change and to make a meaningful change in something I care about. So if you keep
mm,
asking yourself those two questions, how am I doing and what do I need? It will serve you over and over again. And that actually kind of brings me, if I could, to
yeah.
the E,
Yeah, we have to.
because
I could talk to
we
you
got to
all day,
finish
but we
it,
have to.
which is empowered. And that word to me means you're taking your power back from all the things that you can't control to focusing on what can you control. You can control you can control your actions, you can control your thoughts, you can control how you move forward. That may influence others, but all the things outside of us that we can't control and we can't impact will zap and take our power. And so it's not to say we're not upset or moved or impacted by those things. Of course we are. And we can empower ourselves by asking ourselves, what do I want to do about it? What is important for me to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or what can I control here? Sometimes all we can control is nurturing ourselves and changing our mindset about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's then where my control lies. And that's how I empower myself is focusing on those things. What's my narrative about this? What's my brain, my story saying? What are my values? Who do I bring in to support me? How do I nurture myself? All those things are things I can control. And so I empower myself when I put my energy there. And you can see all these work together. They're all about both nurturing and cultivating your sturdy center and then moving forward powerfully from there,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
step by step.
I'm fascinated by the correlation between defining what the things are that you can control and the relationship to empowerment. And I think part of the reason why this is so interesting to me is I was just talking to my partner yesterday about the difference in kind of styles of media and honestly just cultural things. This is going to be very obvious, but I'm talking about political parties here, which is leading with fear mongering. I there's kind of two directions, right? And I think the right and the left, from a media and cultural standpoint in American politics, really speak to the same issue, which is that we're all feeling like a certain amount of pain and oppression. Obviously, some people more than others, right? But we're all feeling like the pressure of the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Like we're all feeling it. And I'm including in that, by the way, white cis men feel it. And that's where some of the kind of talking points against other people's rights to exist or rights to take up space or rights to use the bathroom or rights to work or whatever end up coming from is feeling that same pressure, right? We're all feeling the pressure. You can't escape it. If you live in it, everybody feels it. So both the right and the left are speaking to it, but the right is speaking to it from like a fearful, people are trying to take things from you, people are trying to hurt you, people are coming to this country to hurt you. And then the left is saying, like, hey, this has been systemically created to make you feel this way. And here's the reason why. Now, both of those are bad feelings, but because it is a bad feeling, but I have found, as somebody who used to identify as Republican, I confess, I was raised in small town Cornville, America, and definitely like grew up thinking of myself as a Republican. I always had a socially liberal flavor to me, but I, in adulthood, found my way to being so fucking far left, as if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, like so anti-capitalist, like just yeah. But anyways, I've swung very far. But part of the reason why what I found in the left is that it felt more empowering to me to understand it's this is gonna sound so weird and but it's not you. Like, you're not the problem. That guilt and that shame and the fear that you're carrying is not, it's not because there's something wrong with you. Anyways, I think all of this matters. And it's coming up for me when you were talking about this because I don't think I really thought of empowerment before as being related to understanding what is and isn't in your control. But what I think it breeds is a confidence. And to me, that's what I heard you say. And that's what's coming up for me. That's what I'm dealing with right now. That's what we're dealing with right now. So that's how it's feeling relevant. But I think this matters in interpersonal relationships. I think this matters in client relationships. I think this matters in just all aspects of your life, all these different layers of what part is taking radical responsibility, which was another episode recently, like I think in the very end of December, I think, with Ati. And then, so what part is your radical responsibility and what part isn't? Like, what part isn't?
And that is where we lose our way because we will focus so much on things that are not our responsibility. We will focus on trying to control other people, on trying to control situations, and it's not that that's not understandable and human. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it disempowers us
Yeah.
sort of on accident. It inadvertently disempowers us because now we're focused on someone else where we actually don't have the power to make a difference or change. We don't, that's
Yeah.
not our zone of control. And so being able to bring that back into ourselves, and I use the word control pretty liberally to mean responsibility. Like, yes, this is my opportunity
Mm.
and it's my responsibility. It's when my friend and I were writing the book about boundaries. It's part of that too, like understanding what is in your lane and
Mm.
what is in someone else's lane. And
Mm.
then focusing on your lane and driving the best you can
Mm.
and in a way that aligns to you, aligns to your values, etc. From that sturdiness in you to be like right down
Yeah.
and fully in and focused, all of your energy focused on your lane,
Mm.
on what is yours to own and what is yours to do.
Okay, well, I could definitely talk to you all day,
Oh
but
yeah, the shame piece. We might need to have a whole other podcast on the shame piece. What
yeah,
I love
come
to
back.
say about
Definitely
that.
come back. I think so. I what I want to try to do, we're gonna definitely try it. I don't, we'll see if this is what season three ends up being as a whole. What I want to do for season three is group conversation. So we're going to have like in my brain, 3 to 5 of us on each episode and like chat about a question, right? Like, here's the question, let's go. And I think that that is going to be a fun like new direction to try and see how it goes. So yes, you definitely have to come back. Let's chat about it. Let's just get in like a little holding hands circle with some other people and talk about shame. That sounds good. Okay, so because thank you, you listen to my podcast. What is something that's making you happy right now?
I've been thinking about this question for weeks because sometimes it's hard to find the
Yeah.
thing that's making you happy. But actually, it's quite easy for me to answer
Good.
this one today because we got a new dog. So we have a
Oh.
new little family member,
Oh.
and we had lost our dog last year. And we had a couple of other losses, deaths, and it was just a sad end of the year.
I'm sorry.
And then we had this opportunity to get this pup, and it is bringing so much joy to all of
Oh.
us, and snuggles and love, and to see my kids, they're 12 and 7, to see them light up again.
Mm.
It means so much to me.
Yeah,
Yes, we love this little guy, but I also just love how pets can do so much regulating of our own nervous system,
yeah,
co-regulating with us and
it's
bringing
true.
so much joy. So that's what's making
It's
me happy. How
so
about you?
true. Man, you know what? I think I needed to hear that because I mean, I love my pet. I love my pets, but my husband and I keep on saying we're in our selfish era and we have kind of, listen, no rush. We love, love, love. We have two cats, love them, but I don't think we're going to do pets after these pets. I think we're going to take a pet free season where we're only responsible for ourselves. Like our kids are grown and there is a part of me that like very much craves not being responsible for anyone other than ourselves. And I think or directly responsible. And I think that sometimes, man, they're such a pain in the butt. They are needy. They want so much attention. And especially with like cats, they'll cry if you lock them out of the room you're in, but then they disturb you in the room you are in. They lay across whatever you're in the middle of. One of my cats has taken to like, she needs to be like as close to your face as possible. She'll just climb right on up and just lay right at your face, like on your chest. And it's so easy to be annoyed by that, but you're so right. When what you need, how am I? What do I need? When what I need is co regulation, there is nothing as good as that. Like, yes, please come climb up and lay on me.
Oh, it's
So
so
I
true.
feel
I
you.
have to take him out. I have to take him out to go use the restroom, use the backyard,
Yeah.
like once an hour. And it reminds me, like, oh, it's actually really wonderful for me to come out once an hour and stand in the sunshine and breathe fresh air,
That's such a good perspective. Yeah, puppies are hard, but also adorable. And I think, like you said, seeing your family light up after a lot of hard things, hard losses, and in a hard time, the world is hard. That, yeah, you just can't put a price on that. Okay,
Mhm.
what's making me happy right now? Okay, this is going to take a turn. So I'm going to just caveat this with we're going to have more conversations about AI and the ethics of AI and all of the like ups and downs of this chaotic world we're living in. So this is not the time for that. We are already over. So I'm just going to say like please know when I say this that I am a person who for at least a year it has kept me up at night to think of the environmental impact of generative AI. Okay? This is a conversation I've been trying to have on this podcast. I want to find people who are very knowledgeable and have and come from like a place of scientific expertise to be able to speak about it and not just us like just kind of shooting the shit about it. So yes, that we need to have that conversation. Okay. And the world is going to include AI like moving forward. So I am a big believer that figuring out how to use it well and how to use it as ethically as possible does matter. So with that caveat that like there are some serious ethical conversations that need to be had, one thing that has been making me happy is I have established a new relationship with ChatGPT. And I did not make it a custom GPT, and I totally should have, but whatever. I still could, but it's in a conversation right now where ChatGPT has become my fractional CFO. And there is an actual human who I want to hire as a fractional CFO in my life, and I love her. But I have a really big hang up about I need to get control over my like confidence and empowerment over my financial decisions in my business. They are bigger than me at this point. I have a team, etc. There is a hang up I have of so I'm going to pay someone to do that. Like in order to get control of your finances, you have to pay someone for help. So for now, we're starting with this. Now, I do not have a CFO background, so I literally told ChatGPT, I need you to be the authority, but also also here's my money story. So I need you to also like come to me understanding that this is my relationship with money. And then like I basically told it, ask me whatever you need to know to help me generate reports, analyze reports, and make better financial decisions based on what you already know my goals are in the business. So, like, ask me whatever you need to know. We talked about so much stuff. We talked about the legal structure of my business. We talked about my money goals. We talked about my team. I mean, so many things. And basically, we're going to meet once a month with my financial reports so that it can analyze my financial situation. Now, there, of course, are like certain details that you should not give ChatGPT, by the way, like no problem. However, I will say this. If you didn't know about making a custom GPT, you can do that on a private server and then it does not actually feed the like larger internet. It's just a learning it learns and then interacts with you. So you can totally do that in a secure way. So don't give it like your bank account, people, like just to be clear. But I will say this has already been a game changer for me. Like it is so helpful. So it's a good baby step to hiring an actual human fractional CFO. And I'm so excited about this.
That's amazing. I mean, if it's giving you that much value, imagine what a human will give you. And I think there's just so much power in AI that we have not fully even explored yet. So I love that you're interacting with it. I've heard that when you do like have those conversations with AI, it's so much more powerful for you. And that line from, I think it was Star Trek or something, with great power comes great responsibility
Right.
is
Yeah.
also like brings
Yeah.
me back to the beginning of what you said. So
Yep.
way to go to be thinking about all of that.
It does, it matters. I think this year for PodFox, we're leaning a lot more into AI app building, tech tools. Like I think that is that is the world that we're living in, but the ethical conversation matters. And how do we live in an AI driven world and not kill the planet? Like we want to live in an AI driven world for a long time and not for a very short time because the planet becomes uninhabitable by humans. So like these are all valid conversations, but AI is happening whether we use ChatGPT individually or not. Like it is. So yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. Thank you for going over with me for a couple minutes, and I can't wait to have you back.
It has been such an honor. I feel like we just are on the same page, and that is so beautiful. Something else that's making me happy, a bonus, is cultivating community with like-minded
Yeah.
folks. So thank you for
Yeah.
being one of those people for me. And I look forward to
That you. I am so excited to know you. I like your framework a lot. Obviously, it resonates with me really deeply. And in the spirit of community, I'm going to share one last tip and then I will see you next week, which is the questions. How am I doing and what do I need? I wrote them down as well, not just so I remember to ask myself them, but also I have learned from some people like this really good conversation starters for questions to ask other people to have meaningful relationships when you are building connections and building community. So I'm going to say networking. So, one great question that someone gave me a long time ago that I've used for a really long time is, what are you working on right now? So, I use that a lot. I also have added, what are you celebrating right now? Because I really want to celebrate with you. I should say, I stole, what are you working on right now from Bernie Espinoza. She was not a guest on the podcast yet, but she was on our YouTube channel when Amanda and I were doing it. So then I added, what are we celebrating? Like, I want to celebrate with you. And then I stole from Gabby Barrero about the ethics of networking. I stole from her, how can I support you with that? Right. Like, and then now I'm going to steal from you and adapt. How are you doing? And what do you need? So when you just want to be able to reach out to somebody who you've talked to before, you met at a networking event, you did a podcast interview together, you went live on IG before, and then you're like, how do I keep having a relationship with this person? There are some really good conversation starters in there, by the way, that are really meaningful relationship builders because you really mean it. So if you're looking for scripts, I love to give scripts. I'll just leave you with that. But anyways, thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.